What's something you saw as a kid that looked harmless but if you witness it now it would horrify you? When I was a kid I remember riding around on the back of this ATV in this sort of homemade buggy trailer. Our school was volunteering to set things up for a marathon if I recall correctly. Anyways, I remember watching some of the older guys jump off while the ATV was still moving and being young wanting to emulate them I tried doing it. I remember catching my foot on this rock, falling, rolling, and people screaming. I got up embarrassed and just sort of shook it off. Didn't understand why the older people were shaken. Didn't remotely grasp the fact that the rubber of the wheel was touching my face, about to use my head as a speed bump. Looking back, that driver had some incredible reflexes. Super thankful for that. I've always loved the tranquil feeling of being underwater. When I was a kid I would just hold my breath and float around. Sometimes adults would think I was drowning and run up and scoop me out. I don't remember this. It was when I was pretty young, but my parents have told me about it. I used to think it was a funny story. People thinking I was drowning when I was just trying to relax. Until I watched a video explaining child drownings and yeah, the way I acted in water looked exactly like a drowned kid. I don't think it's funny anymore. Floodwater. It was fun and games for the kids, and we even splashed around in it, much to the horror of our parents, who immediately scrubbed us down. We didn't understand then, but now, oh wow, sewer, insects, rats, parasites, etc. I have a childhood memory of my dad acting weird, stumbling and falling around the house and saying bizarre things that didn't make any sense. I thought it was freaking hilarious as a kid, that he was being goofy and silly. I now know he was high as balls on Percocet. Had a jogger get hit by a car outside my house once when I was about 8 or 9. My nephew came running inside yelling at my parents and my sister to call the ambulance because he was bleeding pretty badly. I could even see him from our playroom's window and I wondered what he was doing lying on the grass. Turns out he was bleeding out pretty badly, deliriously yelling at my parents when they tried to help. Eventually, an ambulance came and picked him up, but my parents always told me he made it out okay. The day after, in the spot he was found someone had put a lily in the grass in a vase. It took me longer than I care to admit to figure out he died from the hit and run. I have one that is tragic. When I was 12 I had a friend who was abusive to his little brothers. It never clicked to me. We just thought it was sibling fun, albeit he was a little meaner. Well, he had a toddler brother. One day I was at his house with him alone while he was babysitting his toddler brother. At one point, he was playing with his brother and then he stopped and looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you tell anyone about this I will kill you." He proceeded to pull his brother's diaper down and perform fellatio on him. I was horrified. We left and it shook me for a long while. I told my closest friends and we all knew it was wrong, but we honestly thought more about how that made our friend gay. Honestly, that was our biggest concern. I know it sounds stupid and fricked up, but we were just like, yo, X is gay man. You won't believe what he did. I kept the secret, except for telling my best friend, for maybe a few months, and then I was peer pressured into telling one of the popular kids of the school. The rumor mill went into full swing and within a day or two the entire school was talking about it. At this point, I was terrified of getting into trouble. I was called into the principal's office in the afternoon and absolutely grilled. I remember how mean she was and how much I was crying. They made me write down what happened. Even still, I thought I was getting in trouble for being a snitch and spreading rumors. It was only until many years later that I understood this was child abuse and would prompt an investigation, and that the principal was grilling me to see if I was telling the truth. I didn't understand the concept of child abuse or what was happening. I just knew it was wrong and that my friend was gay, and that was the extent of it. Dang, that's exactly how I was when I was 12. If I saw that crap my first thought would be, dang guys, Billy is pretty gay for sucking his brother's dong. A kid freaking sharpened his fingers with an automatic pencil sharpener at grade 2. Everyone didn't know what was going on until the teacher started freaking out. When I was in high school I got off the bus behind a kid I had known since middle school. We were walking to go inside when he just suddenly collapsed in front of me, smacked right into the pavement and started seizing. I knew something was bad wrong, but I thought he would end up being okay. He died in the hospital the next day because of bleeding in his brain. I knew when it happened that it was really fricked up that I saw that, but I never realized how disturbing it is until I got older. Now it really makes me upset. I have memories of him from middle school and he was just such a sweet and kind kid. He died freshman year and they had a moment of silence for him at our graduation. It was very sad. I remember being an office aide in middle school and my friend came into the office not feeling well. He had a seizure right there on the office floor. I'd never seen it happen before and it freaked me out to see my friend like that on the floor. Thankfully he was okay. IDK what the cause was, as it was a long time ago. When I was around 5 years old, I was in the mall with my mom and her boyfriend. We were in a Radio Shack store and I was sitting at a computer checking it out. An older man walked up to the computer next to me to look at it, and next thing I knew he collapsed and landed on top of me across my lap. My mother's boyfriend ran over cause he thought he was being weird or something, but apparently he had a heart attack and died. I remember them pulling him off me and the paramedics showing up and us leaving. Your mother's boyfriend is a good man. We had a high school teacher who would flirt with the girls, stand at their desks with his one foot up on the seat, basically putting his crotch in their face. Everyone just laughed at it and made fun of him behind his back. Only now do I see what a creep he was. When I was in 6th grade, a girl showed up to school with a Tinkerbell tattoo on her hip. In our child brains, we found this very mature and grown up that her parents had let a family member tattoo her. Looking back at it now, it's concerning that anyone would sign off on a tattoo for a 10-11-year-old. Same thing happened at my school. In 6th grade, a girl came to school and while changing for gym she showed off a big tattoo that said "Daddy's little girl" on her barely developed breast. She turned out okay, but you can still see the tattoo in pictures she posts on Facebook and I cringe just thinking about it. We used to jump off our roof. First time hurt a little, but after a few times you learned how to land. Did it regularly and would try various items as parachutes to see if it slows you down any. I look at that height now and wonder how the heck we never broke anything. Kids' bones are more elastic, I guess. Watching my kindergarten teacher die of cancer. He just kept getting skinnier and paler and more exhausted and eventually he just didn't show up anymore, and that was that. Didn't understand it then obviously. In 2nd grade I remember having a teacher that was pregnant, like really pregnant, and one day she showed up not pregnant and she seemed to be acting oddly. She miscarried twins on a Friday and showed up for class on Monday. Now that's being committed to your job. Later that year her husband wrapped his truck around a light pole, crap-faced drunk. She still showed up for class. We did climbing in Pei, 6th to 8th grade, like rock climbing, and we had to do our own harness and stuff. Pei teacher, supposedly, checked it after we were done to make sure it was done right. One day my neighbor broke an arm and leg because she wasn't properly strapped and fell. This was at an international American school in Egypt around year 2000. For all those wondering what type of school does rock climbing, my American public elementary school kind of did rock climbing, but it was Marizo, a small wall with plastic rocks you could grip on, not the real deal. In my childhood, my neighbor often hired us to help around the garden. When I turned 10, he asked me to come up and help pick the green beans. I went up in some red shorts. While I worked at picking the beans, I happened to glance back at him. I saw this weird jerking motion in his pants. Since I grew up in rural Tennessee in the 70s, I had absolutely no idea what was taking place. I just turned away and continued picking beans. Picking green beans requires a lot of bending over, and I wore very short red shorts. You can figure out what took place. I don't need to spell it out. At what age did you realize what happened and what did you do about it? Getting chased by a hippo while in a small motorboat. I was only like 8 at the time, but I thought it was very fun. Meanwhile my parents were basically crapping their pants. Hippos are utterly terrifying. I would have died of fright. My babysitter was running late to take me to piano lessons and rear-ended an old man at a stoplight. She told me that he must not have noticed because he didn't get out of his car. I thought nothing of it, and she drove away and took me to my piano lesson. I forgot about it, and it didn't click until I remembered the incident years later that I had been unknowingly involved in a hit and run. My mom holding what I thought to be sugar cubes and was mad because she didn't give me any after returning to the car with them at an unknown sketchy trailer where she left me in the car alone for seemed like an hour. I had no sense of time as a child. It was drugs. When I was young and my parents were away, I had to sleep at my grandfather's. A sleepover that I always really enjoyed because he spoiled me very much. I also liked the fact that each day my uncle came over for a few hours for some coffee. It was something I usually enjoyed because my uncle and I have the same weird name, so it created a bond between us. Years later, the same uncle called my dad and my aunt and told them my grandfather had sexually abused him as a kid for 16 years. Every time he came by when I was sleeping over, it was to check if my grandfather didn't do something horrifying to me. Until now, I never had the change to thank him, as he has a huge trauma and broke all contact with my parents. But when I realized that all that time he was there, just to protect me, I couldn't say anything for a few minutes. It hurted him so much to be there. If I would had known then, I would had get my stuff at my grandfather's and run away with my uncle. A girl in my 5th grade class tried to commit suicide. While class was in session, I watched as I saw her fill her bag with a lot of heavy books, put her head up over her chair and put the book bag handle around her neck to choke herself. She was removed from class and I didn't see her for months afterwards. At the time, I didn't really understand what she was trying to do. I thought it was all for attention. In junior high, a girl I had a crush on turned to me in class and asked me if I wanted to see something and then opened her wrist lengthwise with a pair of scissors. In kindergarten, my friend Mike's dad used to pick us up, and he always had a cooler of beers on the front seat with him. Would casually sip from cans as he drove. I saw a mom and her little daughter get shot in a nice neighborhood cafe across the street when I was shopping for shoes with my mom as a kid. I was old enough to know it was terrible, but it didn't quite sink in until much later. Ex-boyfriend shot them and then himself. I had a friend that was in a cafe with his mom. They sat next to a window. The mom then got shot through the window. Luckily she managed to survive. We called it bumper shining. In winter, grabbing the back bumper of cars and sliding behind them. Saw kids doing it all the time. I'm a grown butt man and I still do this, only with slow moving equipment around the yard now. I slipped once a few years ago and somehow managed to get the coffee cup in my pocket ran over, but not me. Fools. Drunks and little children, I guess. I grew up in a northern town with a large homeless population and no homeless shelter. I thought it was perfectly normal to see a homeless person who froze to death on your walk to school in the morning. None of us would even bat an eyelid. When I was a kid, I would go fishing with my dad quite often in the middle of the woods. One time, we heard what sounded like a woman scream. It spooked me, but not terrified. Mostly just confused me. My dad was like, "You know what? I am starving. Let's head home." And we left faster than normal, but he acted normal. Years later, we were reminiscing about all the adventures in the woods, and I mentioned the weird scream, and he said, "Oh, yeah, that was a mountain lion." As soon as I hears the scream, I looked up and saw it looking directly at you from the bank. That's why we got the heck out of Dodge. I had no clue. That's a smart dad. How big props to him. My town swim instructor would always make fun of the boys, anywhere from ages 6-13 or so, for wanting to change in the stalls and not out in the main changing room area where he was with his clipboard. He was eventually arrested when a computer tech found child pee on his laptop when he took it in for some repairs, and thanks to the trial we learned that he was filming us with a little camera attached to his clipboard. Also, that he had been molesting a disabled boy that was in his care. What the frick? When I was 14, I went to my friend's neighbor's apartment because for some reason a 40-year-old woman wanted to be friends with us, and her boyfriend came home and started viciously beating her kids in front of everyone, and she just sat there talking like nothing was wrong. And at the time maybe I was too stunned or just too young to react, but if I saw that now I'd be terrified. I hope the kids turned out fine after all that abuse. Family reunions on my dad's side of the family always meant going to an isolated shack in the woods. The adults would all get wasted except for my mom and maybe one or two others. The dozen or so kids and teens were left unsupervised. I didn't care about that because I was too busy looking for bugs and playing pretend with the other kids. Also, I'm pretty sure a few of my cousins were hooking up with each other. Also, I'm pretty sure a few of my cousins were hooking up with each other. Nothing finishes a day of horseshoes and Aunt Bernice's pie quite like a game of spin the hooch. In middle school, there was blood on the back of this kid's shorts. Me and my friend teased him about having a period. Now as an adult I think he either had hemorrhoids or, I can't even write it, something worse. In 4th grade when we had the creative class, dunno what it is in English but it's called handwork in our country, a kid sewed through his fingertip with a sewing machine. Went straight through his nail with thread and all. I knew it wasn't exactly harmless but I didn't think it was serious because the kid barely cared himself. Anyways, I'd be throwing up if I saw that today. A male classmate of mine, age 10, bragged about having sex. He seemed to enjoy it. Now I realize he was probably being abused but back then I just thought he was bragging. Oh wow, that's heartbreaking. I used to babysit a lot when I was like 12-13. I babysat for a family once where the 2-year-old boy's room had a lock on the outside. They told me to lock him in there for half an hour if he misbehaved, which I never did. At the time it seemed a little strange but obviously now as an adult it seems like a giant red flag. I was about 8 years old and I walked into a public bathroom and I saw 2 people holding small spoons slumped in the corner. I remember telling my mother afterwards and she told me they were tired after eating birthday cake. That made me laugh but it's not funny. When I was about 4 years old I grabbed an Australian brown snake and swung it around like a lasso. The second most venomous land snake. A bite from one of these is a certain death sentence for a child. Nice to meet you, Hercules. There was a cockroach infestation in our bathroom when I was about 7-8 years old. So one Sunday me and my dad decided to take care of it and managed to take out 2 dustpan full of cockroaches with some hit. And many of them were big adult winged cockroaches. I was fearless back then. Now I would crap my pants at least twice if faced with the same amount of flying cockroaches in my bathroom. And after killing them all, I decided to take the dusty pan full of cockroaches and throw them out of the house. In the small yard we had outside, on the road. I am not sure why that was the plan. But I wanted some style points so I tried hurling them all over the top of the main gate from like 6 feet away and of course made it rain cockroaches in the driveway. Then we had to scoop them all up one by one with bare hands. I do remember feeling very accomplished at the end of it all. I wish I could have my fearlessness back. I thought the cockroaches were going to land on your head when you threw them and I was losing my freaking mind imagining it. This is cursed information. Being preteen teen when the internet was taking off, my friends and I saw a lot of crap online I now realize we shouldn't have been exposed to. Oh my god, around the same age, I absolutely had cybersex when I was like 11 and totally clueless. When I was around 7 years old, I went to a friend's birthday party slumber party. We camped in a tent in the backyard and stayed up late talking. We all had princess hats on that my friend's mom had hand sewn for us as party favors. We were little kids. A girl that I had never met before this night bragged to all of us that she knew what sex was and told us she'd been having it with her brother for over a year now. He was much older. He had driven her to and dropped her off at the party in his very late teens, maybe early 20s. She said that he'd taught her how to do it and that we could all do it too if someone ever told us we were pretty. She described several sex acts in way too much detail for a 7 or 8 year old child. She proudly told us that it was only for big girls. I went home the next day and told my mom all about it, just in casual conversation about how the party had gone. I was like a little bit grossed out, but not disturbed at all. I just didn't get it. It had just sounded like some gross game that I was not interested in playing. My mom kinda brushed me off, like that doesn't sound fun to me either. Oh well, and then she spent the whole afternoon on the phone. I was bored, and I remember getting in trouble for sneaking off into the kitchen and eating all the leftover birthday cake and spoiling my appetite while she was so busy in the dining room with all of her phone calls. Found out years later that she was on the phone with my friend's mom to get the girl's full name and family names, and that she then called the police department and CPS. Obvs, we never found out what happened, and I thought about that girl often as I got older and started learning more, taking sex ed classes, etc. I know it was a cry for help, even if she didn't know it yet. Glad my mom was so on top of crap and acted quickly. Your mom. Serious hero. I survived an armed bank robbery standoff with police when I was a baby. My parents and grandparents told me we got locked in the bank on accident and the fire department had to unlock us, but when I got old enough they told me that it was a bank robbery. I'm still mildly shocked at it because you never know how those will go. When I was a kid I had an outdoor deadbolt lock on my bedroom door, the kind you can only unlock with a key. It wasn't because I was a bad kid, it was because I told them about my brother messing with my friend when she spent the night. We were way too young to understand what he was trying to do. One time he tried to get his friend to mess with me while he was messing with yet another friend was spending the night with me. The fricked up part is my brother wasn't even old enough to know exactly what he was doing. My dad lost his crap when I told my parents. My mom promptly took me to get ice cream. I have no idea exactly what happened while we were getting ice cream, but when we got back there was a lock on my door. My relationship with my brother was never the same. He legitimately hated me being in the same room with him. I grew to fear him because anytime we were alone he'd beat the crap out of me, laughing the whole time. My parents constantly fought because of the chaos my brother caused. He loved it. It's taboo and rarely spoken of, but children abusing their parents is a real phenomenon. Some kids just aren't mentally right, and once they have the physicality to go with it, teenagers, parents can really begin to fear their own children. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.